Greetings, friends, and Happy New Year. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, Chief Strategy Officer of the CDC of Tampa, and welcome back to the CDC Experience. Every month, it is our joy and delight to bring you various topics to make sure that our community is informed about the amazing things that we're doing, as well as what's happening around Tampa Bay. As we're preparing for Black History Month and as we begin this year, I think it is encumbered of us to start a great conversation about something that may be lost and preserving our past so we can embrace our future. So today I have an amazing guest with me today by the name of Ashley Morrow. She is a Tampa Bay historian and she's going to share her life with us today. And I'm so excited about the amazing things that she would do in years to come. So Ashley, good morning to you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm glad you are here. I know you're a busy woman and you took time from out of your schedule just to be with us. But tell our watching and viewing audience a little bit about Ashley Morrow.
Well, I was born and raised here in Tampa. I'm 36 years old and I love Black history. I'm also a professional photographer and I love sharing and teaching information that people might not be aware of.
Right. And we need that because Black history isn't really taught as it was in schools. And I remember, growing up, we will learn about all of these amazing pillars that had been a part of history, but we know what's happening in Florida.
Right. And exactly. We learned about MLK. We learned about the Malcolm X's. We learned about the Harriet Tubmans. We learned about all these amazing people, but little did we know there were amazing people right here.
Right.
So, and some of us go to schools that are named after some of these amazing people. So I thought it was very important that we try to get that information out. So I use mediums like social media to get the word out about these amazing people.
So what brought you into a place of loving Black history and the history of Tampa?
Well, it starts with self.
Okay.
When you learn about yourself, and your genealogy and your family, then I feel like it kind of expands out. For me, during the 2020 protests that were going on, I was going out and photographing the protesters. And I was really excited about all the things that were going on. And I was telling my father about it. And he was like, Ashley, this has already happened. I've already told you about well, it was his uncle, your great uncle, Norris Morrow, and he was involved with the White Hats. He was one of the leaders of the White Hats.
For those that are listening and watching, what are the White Hats?
The White Hats, so in 1967, a young boy by the name of Martin Chambers, I believe he was 19, was shot in the back by Tampa Police Department over in the area what is now Encore, which was the Scrub at the time. Central Park Village. And so what ends up happening, the community, there's a lot of unrest and people come out, they start burning down buildings and things and just wrecking the street, which is Central Avenue that we hear and know and love. James Hammond actually organized a group of young people. Now, back then, football was king. Mm-hmm. So Norris Morrow was a big football player at Middleton. And he gathered them all up and he said, we need to stop these kids from wrecking our community. So they go out and stop the riots and keep the rioters at bay. And they actually end up going to D.C. and speaking to some of the bigwigs up there, like Bob Kennedy, Kennedy's brother. And when they go up there and speak, they talk about a lot of the things that we still have going on today, like job reform, jail reform, prison reform, all of those things were still going on back then. So once I learned about that, then I started reading some of the newspaper articles and started seeing other people's names. And I'm like, wait, who was that? Who was this? Who was this?
So it hooked you.
It just hooked me. And then I was like, just start with the things that I know. I know I went to Howard W. Blake High School. Let me just research him. Then you start seeing his circle. You want to research his circle. And then you start learning about those other people and their circles. And it just became this big web of information. And from there, I started meeting different mentors like the Gloria Jean Roysters, the Ursula Odoms, the Fred Hearns, all over the community, there were Black people that had already heard and knew about these stories and these people. And I was like, why don't I know? We all need to know about this information.
Right.
And, many of them were very forthcoming with information and willing to share. I was met with the, you don't know about that kind of trope only a few times. But they were willing to talk and share that information. I was really happy about it.
That's interesting because I think a lot of information, not that I think I know, a lot of information that exists is really existing in someone's head and someone's memory, and they're not doing a great job of passing that down to generations. And so now we have a group of people, this generation, that's not aware of what has happened, and they know about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and maybe even John Lewis, but there are some people that have made some interesting strides in Black America and even in Tampa that we're not hearing about. And I know you did some research on a couple of people in Tampa about what they've done. Just share a little bit about that. I thought it was very fascinating about the architects with the bridge.
Yeah, so the first one is the architect named John Hall. He actually laid the foundation for the Kennedy Bridge around the early 1900s, 1912, I believe. The sand around the banks of Hillsborough River are very shifty. They're hard to pile drive into that sand. So he was well known, and I believe D.B. McKay actually, he was the mayor at the time, commended him and said, he's an amazing worker, and you guys got the right person to come and do this job. So as you can see, the Kennedy Bridge is still standing. So
wow. Would have never known that. And it takes someone who loves that to go back and do that. Now, as we're looking at Black history, and I know so much has happened over just this year about DEI and Target, so many people have been affected by that. What do we do to, embrace Black history, not minimizing what anyone else has experienced in any other culture, but how do we take on the formidability of being embracive of who we are while not excommunicating other people?
I feel like if we just tell the story, and then those characters will kind of just fall into place. I think what's happened in the past is Black people have just been left out of the story. If you just tell the full story, our names and our presence is felt within the story.
That's interesting because I'm assuming some people don't want to tell the story because they don't want all of the information to get out there. Why do you think even in our culture, in our community, in the Black community, that we don't want to share the story of the information that we know?
I think the reason why our history is sometimes forgotten or lost is we're not taking the time to have the conversations anymore. Life has become a lot faster, and if you think about maybe just last night, there are 10 other things you could be doing other than what you did. And now we're not sitting and taking the time to talk with our children and make sure that they know the information that they need to know in order to carry on or pass down or know their legacy. Legacy is so important. When you know your legacy, if you know your history, you realize where you came from and who you came from. And it instills a sense of pride. Now, imagine you got a whole bunch of people that don't have a bunch of pride or any pride in themselves. They're not really acknowledging the people's shoulders that they're standing on. They don't really care. You just have chaos. But if you take pride in where you came from and what your family did in order to get to where you are today, I don't think you would risk that or just throw it all away.
That's a great point. One person from Tampa's history that has really captivated you, that if you had to say this is Black excellence? I know there are a lot of people, but I just want to share with the audience at least just one person that they can go back and just research and say, I never knew about this person. Who's that one person out of many that you can say they are the personification of Black excellence?
I would always recognize Thomas McKnight. Thomas McKnight was enslaved up in Hernando County, and he comes to Tampa, and he helps start the first black school, Harlem Academy. He helps with the education system. He opens a black hospital before Clara Fry, many don't know about. And he did a lot of work. There's an author that's written many books about Tampa's Black history, Cantor Brown, and I asked him about him, Dr. Cantor Brown, excuse me. I asked him about him. He's like, there should be a statue of this man, but there's no picture of him.
Wow.
So, and his history is hidden, but he was the one that would always, and I shared this with the late Councilwoman Gwen Henderson, he was at city council every week advocating for the scrub. We need lights, we need water, like doing the things that we see today. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this man has kind of just been washed over. So as I looked at his story towards the end of his life, while he's working and trying to get the school going and everything, he runs into an issue with not being able to raise enough money for desks, chairs. So his community comes together, they raise money for him. And I believe he gets a money awarded to him by the city as well, but they want to know the records of how much he raised from the community. And he's like, that's none of your business, basically. And once he does that, rumors and, there's this back and forth in the newspapers, just a slander campaign. And I was like, that's, the Hamilton, you love Hamilton? That story, you have no control who lives, who dies, who tells your story. I believe nobody was really left to tell his story. Wow. And it's just gone.
And this is something paramount, that we have to tell the story so that it can pass on, that we have those pictures, we have those moments that we can share with our families. This is that person. Speaking of that, we discussed this. Who are some people that's in Tampa that you can see that is on the cusp of writing history that we need to mark and say they're going to be some change makers?
Oh, yeah. Some change makers that I have seen, Dr. Ponton, I would say Dr. Hilary Van Dyke. I've seen Jamila Davis, who does the walking tours, Black History Walking Tours downtown. I've seen, let me see. There's just a lot of people. You hate to start naming people because then you feel like you're going to forget somebody, and I hate to forget anybody. But some of my mentors even, like I said, the Gloria Jean Roysters and the Ursula Odoms, Fred, you have many people in our community that have taken great strides in order to pass on a legacy. And you can tell that is their mission, that is their goal. So, yeah.
Listen, friends, you've been listening to Ashley Morrow, Tampa Bay Black historian. This is so phenomenal to have this conversation. Even though it's short, it should open your appetite and your mental palate to say, I want to learn more about my culture. Whether you live in Tampa or live in another city, I encourage you to start doing the deep dive so history will not be lost. Ashley, tell us how we can remain connected to you.
Well, you can find me on Instagram or TikTok, Black Tampa Historians with an S, or visit my website, blacktampahistorians.com.
So, Ashley, thank you so much for being with us today. Your impact and your desire to learn, I know, is going to affect so many people to want to learn more. And thank you, friends. Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, Chief Strategy Officer of the CDC of Tampa, and you've been watching the CDC Experience. Listen to all of our previous experiences as well as watching them and this current one on all of our social media platforms. You can find the CDC of Tampa on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn. We're everywhere. As a matter of fact, if you live in Tampa and you're driving on I-4, you can see the CDC of Tampa boat hanging off of the interstate. We're so delighted that you joined us for this conversation with the CDC Experience. Join us next time. Have an amazing day.